Punjabi Hari. Sayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatara Satasi Srimad Vingris Abhay Charnaravinda Bhakti Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Nandakoti Vaishnava Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaurava Gaurava. All glories to the same devotees, all glories to the same devotees, all glories to the same devotees, all glories to Lord Sri Sri Guru and Sri Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna Swadhamapakati Dharma Ganadibi Saha Kalo Nashtadrisham Esha Puranako Vinotaha. This bout Puranas is brown as the sun, has arisen just after departure. Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of this age of Kali should get light from this Purana. Narasimha. Okay, this is a new format. I've never ever given class to my laptop before. I know there's devotees here, but it's not the same. So I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest. So I'll start by, give me a second, I've got everything round about me, devices and whatnot. We'll start by reading the verses from, I am somewhat prepared. Somewhat. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 1, Chapter 11, verse 30. Atavishatsva bhavanam sarvakamam anuttamam prasadayatra patrinam sahasrani shaso shodasha. Thereafter the Lord entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they numbered over 16,000. Purport here. Lord Krishna had 16,000. Oh, sorry. No, that's right. It's the right verse. Lord Krishna had 16,108 wives, and for each and every one of them, there was a fully equipped palace, complete with necessary compounds and gardens. Full description of these palaces is given in the 10th canto. All the palaces were made of the best marble stone. They were illuminated by jewels and decorated by curtains and carpets of velvet and silk, nicely bedecked and embroidered with gold lace. The personality of Godhead means one who is full with all power, all energy, all opulences, all beauties, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Therefore, in the palaces of the Lord, there was nothing wanting for fulfilling all desires of the Lord. The Lord is unlimited, and therefore his desires are also unlimited, and the supply is also unlimited. Everything being unlimited, it is concisely described here as samakama, or full with all desirable equipment. Text 31. Patnya patin grosha grihan upagatam vilokya sanjata mano mahutsava dasturarat sahasasana shayat sakam vrataya vridita lochananaha. The queens of Lord Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Purport. As mentioned above, the Lord entered his home palaces occupied by 16,108 queens. This means that the Lord at once expanded himself in as many plenary expansions as there were queens and palaces, and entered in each and every one of them simultaneously and separately. Here is another manifestation of the feature of his internal potency. He can expand himself in as many forms of spiritual identity as he desires, even though he is one without a second. It is confirmed by the Shruti mantra that the Absolute is one alone, and yet he becomes many as soon as he so desires. These manifold expansions of the Supreme Lord are manifested as plenary or separated portions. The separated portions are representations of his energy, and the plenary portions are manifestations of his personality. Thus, the personality of Godhead manifested himself in 16,108 plenary expansions and simultaneously entered into each and every one of the palaces of the queens. This is called Vallabha, or the transcendental potency of the Lord. And because he can do so, he is also known as Yogeshvara. Ordinarily, a yogi or mystic living being is able to expand himself at utmost to tenfold expansions of his body, but the Lord can do so to the extent of as many thousands or infinitely as he likes. Unbelievers become astonished to learn that Lord Krishna married more than 16,000 queens, because they think of Lord Krishna as one of them and measure the potency of the Lord by their own limited potency. One should know, therefore, that the Lord is never on the level of the living beings, who are but expansions of his marginal potency, and one should never equalize the potent and the potency. Although there is very little difference of quality between the potent and the potency, the queens were also expansions of his internal potency, and thus the potent and potencies are perpetually exchanging transcendental pleasures, known as pastimes of the Lord. One should not therefore become astonished to learn that the Lord marries so many wives. On the contrary, one should affirm that even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, he is not completely manifesting his unlimited and inexhaustible potency. He married only 16,000 wives and entered in each and every one of the different palaces just to impress in the history of the human beings on the surface of the earth that the Lord is never equal to or less than any human being, however powerful he may be. No one, therefore, is either equal to or greater than the Lord. The Lord is always great in all respects. God is great, is eternal truth. Therefore, as soon as the queen saw from a distance their husband, who was away from home for long periods due to the battle of Kurukshetra, they all arose from the slumber of meditation and prepared to receive their most beloved. According to Yajnavalkya's religious injunctions, a woman whose husband is away from home should not take part in any social functions and should not decorate her body, should not laugh, and should not go to any relative's house in any circumstances. This is the vow of the ladies whose husbands are away from home. At the same time, it is also enjoined that a wife should never present herself before the husband in an unclean state. She must decorate herself with ornaments and good dress, and should always be present before the husband in a happy and joyous mood. The queens of Lord Krishna were all in meditation, thinking of the Lord's absence, and were always meditating upon him. The Lord's devotees cannot live for a moment without meditating on the Lord. What to speak of the queens, who are all goddesses of fortune incarnate as queens in the pastimes of the Lord of Lord. They can never be separated from the Lord, either by presence or by trance. The gopis at Vrindavan could not forget the Lord when the Lord was away in the forest cowherding. When the Lord boy Krishna was absent from the village, the gopis at home used to worry about him traversing the rough ground with his soft lotus feet. By thinking thus, they were sometimes overwhelmed in trance and mortified in the heart. Such is the condition of the pure associates of the Lord. They are always in trance, and so the queens also were in trance during the absence of the Lord. Presently, having seen the Lord from a distance, they at once gave up all their engagements, including the vows of women as described above. According to Sri Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, there was a regular psychological reaction on the occasion. First of all, rising from their seats, although they wanted to see their husband, they were deterred because of feminine shyness. But due to strong ecstasy, they overcame that stage of weakness and became caught up with the idea of embracing the Lord. And this thought factually made them unconscious of their surrounding environment. This prime state of ecstasy annihilated all other formalities and social conventions, and thus they escaped all stumbling blocks on the path of meeting the Lord. And that is the perfect stage of meeting the Lord of the soul, Sri Krishna. Text 32. Tam atma yaya drishtibir antaratmana durantabhava paryabhire patim nirudam apyashrava netrayor Vilajjatinam Brigovarya Vaiklava. The insuperable ecstasy was so strong that the queens, who were shy, first embraced the Lord in the innermost recesses of their hearts. Then they embraced him visually, and then they sent their sons to embrace him, which is equal to personal embracing. But, O chief amongst the Brigus, though they tried to restrain their feelings, they inadvertently shed tears. Although due to feminine shyness, there were many hindrances to embracing the dear husband, Lord Sri Krishna. The queens performed that act by seeing him, by putting him in the cores of their hearts, and by sending their sons to embrace him. Still, the act remained unfinished, and tears rolled down their cheeks, despite all endeavours to check them. One indirectly embraces the husband by sending the son to embrace him because the son is developed as part of the mother's body. The embrace of the son is not exactly the embrace of husband and wife from the sexual point of view, but the embrace is satisfaction from the affectionate point of view. The embrace of the eyes is more affectionate in the conjugal relation, and thus, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, there is nothing wrong in such an exchange of feeling between husband and wife. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshut Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadam Andiham Shri Guru Shri Judipada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnav Cha Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabhanu Jagate Gopesha Gopaka Kantara Tapta Kanchara Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Krishna Bhanu Shuddhadevi Pranamah Panchkapa Turbishcha Kripa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Bhave Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare So there's quite a lot of information and purports on various topics. So I'll just try and pick a few out and just do a little talk in that sense. So the center figure is Krishna. Though many things are happening, Krishna's coming from Stanipur after Kurukshetra, after consoling the Pandavas and seating Maharaj Yudhishthira on the royal throne, and now he enters Dwarka, and from the outside of Dwarka coming, he meets many different personalities, all share different relationships with him, and he meets him accordingly, and he enters the Dwarka itself. Dwarka is described very beautifully in the Bhagavatam. And again, there's many different personalities he has association with, and he meets him accordingly. And as it goes further, then he comes here to the palaces. So I never heard any of the previous classes, so I don't know where I'm going to say something that possibly other devotees have said. There is a good chance of that, but that's okay, because repetition is the mother of remembrance. So, and remembering Krishna in relation to his devotees and to his activities, then to hear them again is actually what it's all about. So every year we hear probably the same philosophy described in different ways, same pastimes described from different angles by different devotees. So this is all positive. So I don't know where anybody knows or has read about how Dwarka was manifest. That in itself is fantastic. Krishna himself is fantastic, and everything round about him that happens is fantastic. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita when he's explaining the nature of the soul, he says it's amazing. He goes to say, previous to that, he's explaining what the soul isn't. No, it can't be burnt by fire, it can't be moistened by water by the wind, it's eternal, all these things, everlasting, primeval. But ultimately he says the soul is just so phenomenal that actually it's amazing. So he's the supreme soul. So therefore he's, I don't know what the word is, even more amazing. So just even the story of from Mathura to Dwarka and the creation of Dwarka in itself is an amazing story. So I'll say a little bit about that because I was thinking about it during the week while I was working. I drive, so when I'm driving, I'm thinking a lot. So as I was asked to give this class some time ago, it's been very, very good meditation because I've went over a million things in my head from all different angles. So therefore, for me, it's been very purifying. I'm very happy to have been given this opportunity to sit here, and also I'm very happy for the time it's been to take for me to be here. I've managed to absorb my mind more and more in Krishna and the philosophy, and it's been very, very nice. Many things have happened. It's a fantastic. That in itself would be a class or two. Krishna is very wonderful. So Krishna, of course, created Dwarka from his mind. He manifested it through his internal potency due to the danger he perceived from Kalyavana, who had appeared. Kalyavana was the son of he was manifest from a Brahmin who got a little bit upset because he heard the Yadavas insult him because he couldn't have any children, and they had laughed at him, saying he was like a bit of a eunuch, and therefore he performed austerity, and he got a benediction from Lord Shiva. He wanted a son that would cause disturbance to the Yadu dynasty, and this son became a king of the Yavanas. I don't know what country that is or what, but they had a massive army. And of course, Narad Muni is involved as usual. Not as usual, but generally he's involved in some way in Krishna's pastimes. This Kalyavana, he went to Narad Muni to ask who were the greatest kings and the greatest rulers on the planet at the time. Of course, Narad Muni said, well, it's the Yadu dynasty. So he immediately went to Mathura with a huge army. I mean, millions. And so previous to that, Jarasandha had already tried to attack Mathura many, many times, 17 to be exact, and had been humiliated. In fact, the first time Jarasandha had attacked with a huge army, Krishna and Balaram came out themselves just with a small army and destroyed them. But he allowed Jarasandha to leave because he knew that things were going to happen in the future. More armies, he would destroy more armies, which was one of like kind of side mission to destroy the military forces on the planet at that time that were causing disturbance. So Jarasandha had come again and again, and Krishna had just destroyed him again and again. So at this point, Kalyavana had appeared, and Krishna was thinking, oh, if Kalyavana comes and Jarasandha comes at the same time, they'll be greatly harassed, and he was worried for the residents of Mathura. Therefore, within his mind, by his internal potency, he created Dwarka, phenomenally, perfectly architectured, if that's the word, by Vishvakarma. And Indra, of course, gave the assembly house, and many of the other demigods involved to create this great, huge city. And then in the evening, in the nighttime, while the residents were sleeping, Krishna transported them all to Dwarka. And when they woke up, they were in this massive palatial city. And then Krishna dealt with Kalyavana. In fact, Krishna just came out on his own with no armor, just a garland. Obviously, he had clothes on. And Kalyavana was quite surprised. And he chased after Krishna, and Krishna, of course, just walked this little bit ahead of him by Krishna's supreme potency. He walked just a little bit ahead, and Kalyavana couldn't catch up with him. And of course, he went into this cave, and Muchukunda, it's another pastime, Muchukunda was sleeping there. Kalyavana, thinking it was Krishna, kicked Muchukunda, and Muchukunda woke up. And fire emanated from his eyes, his body, and Kalyavana was no more. So, and then of course, then Krishna went to Dwarka. So that's how can I say, a brief summary of those events. But Krishna's performing all these different pastimes. And of course, the center figure is Krishna, although so many things are going on. There's so many kings and queens throughout I was thinking, there's so many kings and queens and so many palaces and kingdoms and wars and so many intrigues that went on, even in this country, in the UK, what to speak of all the other countries and all the other kings and queens and palaces. There's so much of war and death and murder and all the horror of material life has happened. And some of that's been recorded. But historians may be somewhat interested from a mundane point of view. Here, the pastimes of Krishna are especially fantastic because Krishna is the center. Just like Srila Prabhupada mentions about the Bhagavad Gita, when they mention all the names of the warriors and the battlefield, Kurukshetra, although it was a holy place, it was made more so by Krishna's advent there, by Krishna being there. So again, Krishna is the center figure. So here in the first purport, I'll pick little points out. Srila Prabhupada mentioned that Krishna is unlimited. So for the most we know, Krishna is unlimited. And it's therefore his desires are unlimited. And you may think, oh, desires unlimited. I thought that was the material. we are sometimes in that position. Our desires are just like forever coming. Just day in, day out, we have desires because of our interactions with the material energy. Krishna's desires are different. Krishna's desires are for relationship, and therefore, and also his supply is unlimited. So therefore, his facility is unlimited, and therefore the palaces were perfect to the fullest extent. So it was suitable for Krishna to enjoy pastimes with his wives, his queens, and his conjugal ras, slightly different from the mood of the Vraj Vasis. So Krishna is the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Amsavasha Prabhavo, Matasavam Pravartade, Iti Matva Bhajantimam, Buddhabhava Samanvitaha. So whatever we have in the material world, whatever we have and whatever anybody else has, to whatever extent, people who like run the countries, the billionaires, the elitists, all the things we hear nowadays, all the words we hear, all the persons that are doing whatever they're doing on here on planet, whatever they have is only coming due to their previous activities, due to the reactions of their karma. And it's finished. They have it for one small lifetime, maybe a few lifetimes, and it's Mitra Sarva Haras Jaham, Krishna says it. I come as all devouring death. Finished. Everything's finished. So Krishna's not like this. Doesn't have a finish. He is eternal. So the first half of this verse, Aham Savasha Prabhu, that Krishna's the source. That's like a point made. And the second half of the verse is Krishna saying how he desires for us to approach him through devotional service, through love and devotional service. Otherwise, if we don't engage our senses in something, we have to engage our senses. That's the nature of the senses. They have to be engaged around the mind. They have to be engaged. If we don't engage our senses in something higher than just the mundane platform, then we'll be forever trying to engage our senses in the mundane platform. And in the 7th canto, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, then Prahlad Maharaj says this very, it's a famous verse. Vatana Matirna Krishna Paratas Fatova Mitu Pipadyeta Griha Vritanam Danta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punas Charvita Charvananam Punas Charvita Charvananam. That because of uncontrolled senses, then persons that are too addicted to materialistic life will make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chewed that which already been chewed, and therefore their inclinations towards Krishna are never aroused, either by their own efforts or by the instructions of others, or by a combination of both. So that's a very, very instructive verse, and we can see that. Maybe we can see it within ourselves previous to coming to Krishna consciousness. And we can also see it while we're trying to practice the process of Krishna consciousness, that the senses are very strong and they do sidetrack us if we're not fully absorbed. So for some who are fully absorbed, then fantastic. That's fantastic. That's the process. And for others who have other activities we perform in the material world for maintenance of the body and family, then we know sometimes we can be swayed here and there, and our absorption is not so perfect. But taking the enthusiasm from this verse, although it seems like quite a negative verse, puna punas charvita charvananam, that chewing what's already been chewed. So we know, well, I know from when I was young, this is quite gross, that when I used to go when I was a kid, maybe other people did this, maybe it's a Western thing, I don't know. You would be chewing chewing gum and you would stick it on your bedpost. Then in the morning when you wake up, you put it in your mouth. I know some of you might be thinking, it's been lying overnight and wherever. And you try and get some, oh no, it's still got some flavour. So we're doing a similar thing in the material world. We know that's how it works. But on the other hand, if we implement this kind of line, chewing what's already been chewed, the Bhagavatam and the Vedic scriptures, but mainly the Bhagavatam, because it's the Amala Purana, it's the scripture which we're engaged in, because it deals with the past tense of the Lord, and deals with, and the Goswamis, everything they wrote is in connection with the Bhagavatam. And Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas are expansions explaining the relationships, and back to Rasamrita Sindhu, Sri Rupa Goswami is explaining also the Bhagavatam, the relationships with Krishna and his devotees. So so therefore we can chew what's already been chewed in the sense of Krishna's pastimes. Was this verse? I've forgotten it. It's in by it'll come to me. And Svadu Pade. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Person of Godhead, Uttama Shloka, who is glorified by choice prayers. Those who have developed those who have developed transcendental relations with him relish hearing of his pastimes, again and again. So therefore, that's chewing the chewed in the transcendental sense. So we can chew what's already been chewed, and as we hear from that Nigama Kalpa Taror Galatam Samita Drava Amitam Pibita Bakaftam Rasam Arayam Mahuraho Ratska. In his verse, third verse of the first canto, then that's explaining this process that just like a parrot is chewing the fruit becomes more ripe, so more sweet. And also by us chewing that which has already been chewed, it becomes more relishable. So therefore, like I was saying earlier on, we hear the pastimes again and again every year. Krishna, Janmashtami, and the like Lord Chaitanya's appearance, the appearance of the great acharyas, Krishna's different pastimes, and they're relishable and ever fresh if we have the ears to hear them. Otherwise, they just become stories like the mundaners here. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the next purport about Krishna marrying 16,108 wives. It's like, but actually, Krishna can marry 16 million, Prabhupada says. And I think it says 16 million, 16 trillion, I don't know. 16,000 million, 16,000 million. So Krishna's not limited. He does things in such a fantastic way. So some people may not believe because they don't have the adhikar, they don't have the qualification, the purification, to see Krishna as this transcendental personality, this central figure, the Supreme Person. Yeah. So engaging the senses, Sarvapadi Veneer Muktam, Tat Part Vain, Nirmalam, Rishikesha, Sevanam, back to Uchite. So this is from the Narapancharattra, but it's also in the, it's mentioned in the Majalila, Stan Satamrita, engaging all senses in the service of the Lord for the pleasure of the Lord. So from this verse, this came the verse by Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, 1111. Anya Balasiddha Sunyam, this verse. It's how can I say an expansion from that? That actually that we engage our senses in the service of the Lord for the pleasure of the Lord in a pleasing way, free from philosophical speculation and full of activities. So Krishna is a Rasovaisa. You've heard this. Krishna, Srila Prabhupada mentions it a few times in his books. Krishna, it's from the Taittiriya Upanishad. And the whole I wrote the whole verse down. I never knew the whole verse, and I just found that. Now you can just type it in. It's very easy. Rasovaisaha rasam yevayam labdavanande bhavati. And the translation is when one understands the person of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure. There's a few different translations. Prabhupada adds a few things. The reservoir of all kinds of reciprocal exchanges of loving sentiments. That's very, very nice. That's from one of Prabhupada's books. Krishna, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. So again, by understanding that Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure and also the reservoir of all kinds of reciprocal exchanges of loving sentiments. Very, very poetic, very nice. Then Krishna, we understand, we become transcendently blissful. So we get these understandings from Shastra, from reading about Krishna, hearing about Krishna. And Krishna reveals himself through these methods of devotion he's given in Shastra. He reveals himself. In a sense, the study of Shastra itself doesn't reveal Krishna, but it definitely reveals the means to attain the platform by which we can render devotional service through the mercy of the spiritual master. We can attract the mercy of Krishna through serving the spiritual master and getting the mercy of the spiritual master. We know this from the prayers that devotees sing in the morning, Mangalarti in the temple, maybe some at home sing these prayers during the day. I sometimes go over them in my head when I'm driving. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one attains the mercy of Krishna. Without the mercy of the spiritual master, then that doesn't come into play, doesn't happen. By the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of the association of devotees, we attract Krishna's mercy. Okay, plenty of time. So the next verse 31 and verse 32, these are of course dealing with the queens and Dwarka, Krishna's associates, Krishna's queens, and some of the moods in Dwarka. So you can read some of the dealings of Krishna in the 10th canto. There's many from like chapter 50 after Krishna leaving Mathura and going to Dwarka. There's many pastimes in Krishna's relations with the queens. Here is this dealing just with the queens feelings of separation. They've been without Krishna, at least externally, like physically, for a long time. Krishna was traveling. He was in Dwarka. I don't know what the time period was. He was aware there was a whole battle, a whole war. And now Krishna is coming back. But it's not that even though Krishna is coming back, they weren't thinking of Krishna. They were thinking of Krishna all the time. And then that how can you say, that feeling is heightened when they know that union is going to happen. So even from a mundane point, from ourselves, from a mundane point, we have experienced that we know someone's coming, a friend. Throughout our lives, we know we're going to get something, like a Christmas is coming for those that followed Christmas when they were younger. Most the thought of meditation, or birthdays, the meditation on what am I going to get, could be quite extreme sometimes, and then the present was there. It was the meeting, and then we'd get, whoa, it was great, and then of course it would end up just discarded at some point as we went on to the next thing. Year after year after year after year, as the cupboard piled up with all the stuff that we just grew out of, and the fads, the fads that the industry that we live in, society, creates fads, as we know, and people become absorbed in those fads because it's all within the modes, and we're absorbed, saying we in general, absorbed in the modes. We get caught up in all these different fads, whatever it is, clothes people wear, whatever, hairstyles, I don't know, I'm not really involved in it, especially not hairstyles. And so they get discarded, and they get on to the next one, and to the next, and to next. Economic revolution. So in Srila Prabhupada's summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the introduction, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada mentions this, the mundane ras, he calls it, and the Bhakti ras. So the Bhakti ras is only within Krishna's Swarup Shakti. Only. Never at any time when Krishna, even when Krishna is here in the material world, is he affected by the Maya Shakti. He's the actual, it emanates from him. He's the source of the Maya Shakti, but never is he affected by that. Krishna is dealing with his devotees, especially here, the eternal associates, but with all devotees, that sometimes, of course, it acts, we seemingly think that Krishna is dealing with us in the material world. Things are not going as well as we'd like, and we think, oh, it's our karma. Sometimes it's reactions coming. We're thinking we're burning up. It's karma, the reactions from our activities. When Krishna deals with his devotees, it's through the Swarup Shakti, the Bhakti Shakti. So the mundane ras and the Bhakti ras are entirely different energies. But there is some similarities, but there's no way that from the similarities from the mundane ras can really touch the experience of the Bhakti ras. And Srila Prabhupada makes this point in the Nectar of Devotion. But there is a desire to experience something higher than the material world. That's why we're always chasing the carrot, so to speak, the will-o'-the-wisp of material life, because we want to always experience something higher. People go to great heights to become the best at something for some period of time. They get a gold medal for 1 year after years of training and perseverance and austerity. They get a gold medal, and then they never, that's it, that's their zenith. They never, I'm not saying always, but generally you'll find that the next year they're not number one. Or even if someone is the top, it's only for a certain period of time. And you see people, sometimes it comes up, because we have Facebook, such and such has died, or it's a memory of somebody and you think, oh yeah, they were really famous. in 1971. And some people maybe look nowadays, it's like we're in the year 2022. Someone from like a younger generation maybe looking, thinking, who's he? They don't even know. And I experienced that on the street distributing books. I've been distributing books. We were staying in the temple in Liverpool. Titishu had left with his wife, had went to the manor, and the temple was, nobody was running the temple. So we took over the Sunday program. Well, first it was actually Yuga Kishore. If Yuga was there, I know his wife was listening when she was doing her service. She says she listens in when she's doing her service to Radha Madhava. Yugala is Sivapriya's husband. He was there first with Charadeshna. It's gone back some past time. And then after that, Gudrun Bihari and myself and a few other devotees, Radhika Nagara, a few other devotees were there. And from that, we had a Sunday program in Liverpool. I'm digressing. But I would be on the street distributing books, and I would use the George Harrison plug because, well, we're in Liverpool, the Beatles, Liverpool, and I would use like the Beatles plug to try and sell the books. Of course, try and use whatever you can to influence the living entities to get the books. But actually some kids I would meet and I would mention George Harrison and they'd go, who? And this is people from Liverpool. And I thought, oh my. And it gave me that thought that no, time flies and eventually whatever you've done becomes the past, and maybe we're not so fantastic after all. That we think, hey, look what I've done. I'm really proud of myself. It just becomes forgotten. Even maybe some philosophies stay. So even the Gaudiya Vedanta, which only really existed after from the times of Lord Chaitanya. Not only it did, the Goswamis, they're the ones that, how can you say, formulated the whole Gaudiya Vedanta. Now that's only 500 years ago. And even within those 500 years ago, it got lost. Somewhere in between, it got all kind of like lost, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the acharyas, they revived it. So even in that short period of time, due to the influence of material energy, a lot of that covered over and found again and re-established. And then, of course, it came in the version we get it from Srila Prabhupada's assimilations of the philosophy and his purports, and then it was spread around the world. So things do get forgotten really quick. And again, I guess that in our mind gives us that idea of why, as devotees of Krishna, and are in this parampara and are affiliated with ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada's teaching, that we should, while we're alive, continue to spread that and encourage others to spread it, because Kali Yuga, ignorance is abound. So back to the Bhakti Ras and the mundane Ras. It's hard to appreciate, for one who's materially conditioned, it's hard to appreciate the Bhakti Ras because it looks like Krishna is just enjoying. And because we want to enjoy and we see Krishna is really enjoying and he's really like superhuman, we become a little bit envious. But by the mercy of the devotees and mercy of the spiritual master, we ourselves are allowed to enter into that realm where we can understand it's Krishna and his whole entourage, and we ourselves can become part of that entourage. We can become part of it while we're here in the material world, in this body. This is our sadhana siddha deha. This is the body we have in this lifetime by which we are perfecting our sadhana, so that we can learn to serve Krishna later in a deeper way, more a way that's pleasing to Krishna. I was just reading this morning the verses in Stan Charitamrita, the Shashaskan verses. Of course, they don't come in the 8 verses in the string. How shall we say that? The string that are given, that we get the 8 verses. They're kind of detached from each other as the other verses in between, verses that Srimati Radharani is speaking. It's very enlivening. I've gone off on a tangent. If I go off on a tangent, I may forget about what I was speaking about. Which I already have. Krishna Chaitanya. And there's nobody here. There is maybe somebody listening. Sometimes when we have a class and there's people, I can be redirected. The mundane Ras.
Yeah, Bhakti Ras.
Thank you, Prabhu. In the Bhakti Ras. So we can find analogies. We can find analogies in the mundane Ras, which can allow us to understand to some degree the Bhakti Ras. Like, for instance, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of, and I've experienced this myself, and probably everyone who has children, or even who has friends that are close to them and they know them quite well. Prabhupada gives the example of he gives the example of the mother's love for the child. Another example he gives is that when you see a shoe, you see your kids' shoes. Well, my kids are older now. I don't know what they even wear on their feet. But when they were younger, you knew you go to the temple, you take your shoes off. Well, you generally like to know where your shoes are, especially if it's like Janmashtami or it's a festival where the temple's really busy and there's hundreds of pairs of shoes. So when you see your shoes, you also see your child. You see things in connection to your child. So that's like, how can you say, a mundane example. So if we have a more transcendental example, when we go to the temple and we see the devotees, then we're reminded of Krishna. We see the tilak sometimes, we see the neck beads, maybe some ornaments. And then we go to the temple, we offer obeisances, we maybe see Srila Prabhupada's murti. And then we'll see the deities. So whatever our realization is, the relationship with deities is, still we see the deities and we're reminded of Krishna. And whatever level we are, it may be deeper, our experience with deities may be deeper because we are serving them more. Mother Sevapriya may experience that. She's serving Radha Madhava constantly, so her experience will deepen. I've experienced that myself when I was doing activities around the deity worship. Your experience with the deities would deepen. And then just one thought came to mind, if I can digress again. When we used to go and travel in Sanktan, we'd be away for a few weeks, traveling in motorhomes, or we'd be living somewhere else in England, in North England, and we'd be living in Sanktan houses. We'd be doing our book distribution and our programs. And then we'd come back, and then we'd have the temple program, which we hadn't had for a long time, really, because our program was quite small when we were traveling, and not quite the same. But evening kirtan in front of the deities was a fantastic thing. It was a real. Yeah, it wasn't mundane. It wasn't a mundane thing. As mundane as my consciousness is, it was a phenomenal experience of having engaged in the surrendering process of controlling the mind and senses to try and distribute Srila Prabhupada's books and engage fallen souls. When we came in front of the deities for Gora Arti in the evening time, especially Gora Arti in the evening time, the experience was something which is very hard to explain. But it was just, as I was saying earlier on, it was amazing. It was something really wonderful. So that can't really be explained, like in terms. It's what's the word? It's I don't want to say it's a revelation, a realization. It's a transcendental experience. It's not just open to like one, or it's open to anybody. Anybody who walks the Bhakti Marg, who walks the path of devotion, can experience and has probably experienced these moments of clarity in relation to Krishna, and experience something, maybe some light lit up in their minds and hearts. So here in the Bhagavatam is explaining a little bit about the relationship, about their experience on that platform, on the Swarup Shakti, on that platform, their experience of long separation from Krishna and meeting. So sometimes separation is greater, in a sense that we're in deep in meditation. We're thinking about the person more and more and more and more. Where maybe in our meeting, in the initial meeting, it's something fantastic, but then it can become something, what's the word? Familiar. So I don't know very much about the conjugal relationships of the queens of Dwarka. The sense Swakiya means married. They're married. The relationship is a little bit different. Krishna still relishes that relationship. It's not that somehow like that. For instance, those in Sakyaras or Vatsalya, Mother Shodananda Maharaj, these other devotees of the cowherd boys. It's not that Krishna's experience with them or their experience with them is less. It's just different. It doesn't mean their love or that relationship is something like less, and that Madhurya Ras, conjugal Ras, is higher in a sense that somehow it's better. It certainly has certain elements which Krishna really experiences on a deep level. That relationship with Krishna and the cowherd women, the gopis. So here we have some aspect of the relationship between the Krishna and his queens of Dwarka. They were unable to contain their emotion. They tried to. They sent their sons forward first to embrace Krishna, and with that, their also emotions went with the child embracing Krishna, and then they couldn't contain themselves anymore, and they burst out crying. So we might think from a mundane platform that also can happen in the material world, that we feel so attached to someone that when we meet them, our emotions burst forward in moments maybe even of distress, and we can cry. But these are transcendental pastimes, and they're ever increasing and everlasting, unlike the relationships. Sometimes we may say, unfortunately, the relationships here in the material world, we think, oh, it's a great misfortune that the relationships you have with certain individuals eventually will finish on this level because the body has to die. But Krishna's pastimes are going on and on and on. You know, we absorb ourselves in those pastimes throughout our life. The next lifetime, wherever we go, those pastimes will become once again, reawakened within us and reawakened by Krishna's mercy in the form of our bhakti samskars, which we're trying to develop in this lifetime. Okay, I'll leave there. If anybody's got any questions or any comments, then please say so. If not, it's 8:41, so we generally finish at 8:45. Now I also have to get ready to go to work. So anything from anyone? Okay.
Hi Krishna Prabhu.
Oh, sorry.
Hi Krishna Prabhu.
Hi
Sorry.
Krishna.
Hi Krishna. I just want to thank you, Prabhu. That was a wonderful class. Thank you for enlightening us on how Dwarka was manifested, its opulence, and especially the story of Jarasandha and Kalyavana. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Okay, I hope so. Thank you for this opportunity. That was nice. Different speaking to the screen, but thank you. I have to practice that. I tried it earlier on, just talking to the screen. I just found it really silly. So anyway, Hare Krishna. I've got to go. But thank you very much to everybody for being here, and thank you for association, albeit through this medium. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Narasimha Vallabha.
Oh, is that you, Guru Krishna?
It is, yes. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for the class last week. I never got a chance to speak to you. It was very nice. I liked those parts on the Vatsalya on the Vatsalya. It was nice, and just was nice to hear Krishna's interactions. And I was thinking about speaking a little bit about this today, because in the last chapter in the 10th canto, then Srila Goswami, he mentions some of the more deeper moods of the queens of Dwarka. It's this what's it called, Prema Vijitya, this experiencing grief and separation, even though Krishna is still present. And then they start to speak to the moon and the peacock, a bit like when the gopis lost Krishna in the rasa dance, then they were asking all the creepers, and it's a very similar mood. So I was going to speak a little bit about that, but I was a bit nervous. I get caught up speaking about other things.
No, it was nice. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I better go and get ready for work, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.